Tempers boiling over on Capitol Hill. Republican lawmakers blasting the Obama administration over Benghazi. Congressman Dana Rohrabacher telling the House Foreign Affairs Committee this administration has lied to the American people about this tragedy. The arrogance and dishonesty in all of this is breathtaking. Congressman Rohrabacher joined us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Okay, you say they lied, so be specific. What do you think they lied about?
Well, we know that for 6 days after the attack, and we just heard from a member of the Intelligence Committee who saw the film, and they knew within a matter of hours, if not right away, that this was an organized armed hit job by Al-Qaeda, probably, but an organized, commanded effort to murder our people. Yet for 6 days after that, they were telling the American people that this was movie rage. This was a crowd getting out of control in order, and then they murdered our ambassador rather than Al-Qaeda. And what does that do? That means we are not worrying about radical Islamic terrorism. Instead, we're worried about a crowd getting out of control. That was a lie. They knew it was a lie when they said it. When they sent out Ambassador Rice to all the talk shows, they knew that was not the truth. When you tell something that's not the truth to the American people, especially in the middle of a crisis, they shouldn't expect to get away with it and be forgiven.
Well, there's something peculiar, and they're just bits and pieces leaking out of these closed hearings, and which is why I wish they'd be more out in the open. I think that Washington, there's a tendency to overclassify things so that people get excluded when we really, there aren't, things don't have to all be classified, maybe some, but not all. And apparently what I'm hearing is that the CIA claims that they had Al-Qaeda in the sort of talking points that went to the White House that were then fed to Ambassador Rice, and then she went to the talk shows, and somehow she didn't get the Al-Qaeda talking points. That there's somewhere along the road between...
That's baloney. The president himself was at the United Nations talking about movie rage. People throughout the administration were talking about movie rage when they knew damn well, or at least the White House and the CIA knew damn well, that this was an Al-Qaeda attack, a terrorist attack. In fact, 60 Minutes sat on their interview with the president where they tried to say, was this an Islamic terrorist attack? And he couldn't get the words out of his mouth. There's something going on there where the president can't utter the words Muslim terrorist attack.
Well, what I was suggesting is I was suggesting that someone at the White House set up Ambassador Rice. Perhaps. I don't know for sure, but I think that I can't believe that Ambassador Rice would make the decision to exclude Al-Qaeda and go on those shows and make herself look foolish.
I agree.
I think in some ways that I think she got hung out to dry.
No, I agree. This is not, Ambassador Rice was set up by the White House for whatever reason, and the president himself is right when he says, don't blame her. Blame the President of the United States. But for him then to utilize her to lie to the American people and then to nominate her or to float her name as a possible Secretary of State, it's worse than insulting.
I tell you where I do falter, though. And that's not asking more questions, because even within a day or two, everyone pretty much suspected the terrorism. I mean, it had all the earmarks of it, and people suspected. So I would have expected that she would follow through and ask questions. Remember, Secretary of State Colin Powell went before the United Nations, and he didn't ask very many questions, and he talked about weapons of mass destruction that didn't turn up in Iraq. So I'm a little bit suspicious of these government employees being sent out to talk essentially and give a message to the American people that frankly isn't so.
I think there's every reason to worry about that. Just because Secretary Powell had been put in the same spot
but should have asked questions.
Right, and doesn't excuse this president from sending out someone to lie in the middle of a crisis. And if we cannot trust the President of the United States to not go out and intentionally mislead the American people, and what were his motives? He just can't get people upset about radical Islamic terrorism. What's this deal? He does not want people to believe in that.
You see, I go back to the whole thing. I keep in mind there are 4 murdered Americans and injured Americans. And I can tell you that if there were 4 murdered Americans in this city that was unsolved, it'd be on the front page of the Washington Post every single day.
And what did the president call it? Bumps in the road. The president referred to these dead Americans as a bump in the road to better relations with Islam. The fact is that there's an element among Muslims of the world, not even a majority, we're nowhere near close to a majority of Muslims, but there is a group of Muslims in the world who want to do us harm, and we have to be aware of that if we are to defend against it. This president is trying to minimize it, make it go away.
Well, I want to know I would also like to know what the CIA was doing there. I mean, there was a huge contingency of the CIA, and I recognize the CIA's important function to keep us safe. Yeah. But there are so many bizarre aspects of this, even the fact that the security seems not to have been provided by the State Department, but rather by the CIA. I can't help but be suspicious. What in the world are we doing there? Are we supplying weapons to the Syrian rebels? Are we collecting weapons from the Libyan rebels? I know that we're trying to do that. But, there's a lot... There's a lot that's not told, and I think it's reasonable to be suspicious of so much of this.
Well, we need to be suspicious, and we don't know what those things are, but we do know that there was a screw-up in terms of how we were going to defend our diplomats, obviously because they're dead. And we have to, the Democrats tried to politicize this by claiming it was budget cuts by the Republicans, until, of course, the State Department official who actually made the decision went on and under testimony, sworn testimony, said budget considerations played none of that. But then we got to know also, what was the attack? What happened during the attack? And we just heard Mr. Ruppersberger describe that. But then we have to know why it is the president felt, and when I said he lied, he intentionally misled the American people that it was a Muslim terrorist who had done this.
Simple questions. Why didn't the Obama administration call Tunisia and say, let us talk to the person the CIA caught on tape that day? And I'm going to take the last word on that one. Nice to talk to you, Congressman.